This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
We made this. Hello everyone and welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. My name is Kurt North and thank you for joining me for our continuing coverage of the second film from the X-Files, I Want to Believe. We are going through this minute by minute, and joining me is a guest who was on last episode, John Kenneth Muir, who we'll hear from in a second. First of all, we just want to say thank you for all of you who have joined us so far over the 600 to 700 episodes that we've done so far on the X-Cast. It's much appreciated. For those people who may not have done so far, please feel free to join us on our Patreon and join the community there at patreon.com/the X-Cast. You can follow us on Instagram at the X-Cast Pod. You can follow us on Twitter if that's still a thing, if it's X or Twitter or wherever that may well be, at the X_cast. And you can join the conversation on the Facebook group as well, the X-Files Basement, the X-Cast Podcast Fan Group. Please leave a 5-star review if you can. If you enjoy the show, it would mean a lot to us. You don't need to leave any major comments on there. You don't need to give us a full essay review on how you feel the X-Cast is and how great we are. But it does help us get seen. So by all means, if you want to leave us a quick review there, then we would be much obliged. We are looking this episode at minute 46, which runs from 45 minutes to 45 minutes and 59 seconds. It continues on from the previous minute in which Mulder has decided to allow Father Joe to come on a journey with them. They need to hire a car, and they are now looking for any missing persons between the last 48 to 72 hours. Agent Drummy does not believe this, and Mulder calls him out on that. And then we get to the second crime scene, the abduction scene. The car is in West Somerset and is left abandoned, and it's the scene of the abduction. And we finish this episode, or we finish the minute even, with Mulder looking at the car door and the airbag. John, we're back. Another episode. Mulder, like we were saying in the last episode, was trying to figure out, what Father Joe was really up to, whether or not he believed it or not. And you get the perception that he does now believe it. He wants the car, and he wants a list of anyone that's been missing for up to 72 hours. Drummy's reaction, and it's something that we'll see in future minutes as well, is that he doesn't believe it. So I think now's probably a good time to get your opinion on Drummy as a character and exhibits character and how it's portrayed within the film. Do you think it works? How do you think that Drummy fits in within the realm of this film?
I think Drummy harks back to characters we saw a lot in the X-Files TV series. Mulder and Scully often had to work with either local police forces or other FBI agents, right? Federal agents. And there usually was one who looked at Mulder and was like, spooky Mulder, he's crazy. He's leading you down the wrong path. He's nuts. These theories are nuts, right? So Drummy fits clearly into that tradition of not believing. But I think what's interesting is that he's not in Scully's camp. Scully also, greets things with skepticism, but she has an open mind. She has to validate it through science. She's not just going to dismiss outright. She's going to probe. She's going to search. She's going to figure out what she feels. What's the evidence? Drummy, for me, is much more two-dimensional than that. He's not going to move off his skepticism. Listen, a guy bleeds from his eyes. Twice he directs people, agents to this exact spot, things like that. It's like, it seems to me that if that were to occur, like any reasonable person would say, okay, something's going on here. What is it? And then sort of weigh the evidence. We don't see any of that weighing with Drummy. He's just like, no, con artist, charlatan, fake, sending us on a wild goose chase. It's hardening of the arteries. He's very hardened in his opinion. So as a result, I don't find him maybe as nuanced as Whitney is. And therefore I really don't find him as compelling, and then later on in the film, he finds the organ basket and is looking in and sort of like overt disgust. And you're kind of like wondering, who is this guy? He doesn't have any imagination. How does he solve cases? How has he gotten to where he's gotten to? Because he has no sense of imagination at all about what could be happening, which seems a critical thing to have if you're in that field.
Yeah, it's very much an exposition piece, even towards the end of this minute and the beginning of next minute. We'll just talk about in one general one here that he's literally just exposition piece for, she does this, she does that, she does the other. This is what I think, and that's it. And it's very kind of one note, and there's not much to say about this. Within this minute, though, it's quite sparse, really, in what there is to talk about, because there's the digging out of the car by the police officers. They found the actual car itself in, I think is it Somerset? I can never remember the name. I keep saying
yes, that's right.
Somerset, West Virginia. Which is quite interesting that they use Somerset, UK in Fight the Future. Mulder walking through. It looks great. The wide shots look amazing. I always think snow looks amazing in TV anyway. And, we get that the drummy scenes. That's effectively all. So I think now is probably a good time to ask you. I know you mentioned in the previous episode about your time that you wrote the review of the film, and you were kind of quite... was a little bit in opposition to a lot of what way people thought about the film, but generally on reflection, you've obviously watched it recently as well. What are your general thoughts on the overall nature of the film, how it fits in the X-Files, how it fits in a film style and all that? Because I think you're generally quite positive of this movie.
I am, and at the risk of alienating listeners, I actually prefer it to Fight the Future. I feel that it wasn't the film that a lot of X-Files and a lot of general audiences wanted, but I feel it's a film that I'm very satisfied with artistically. From the beginning of the film, the first shots, Chris Carter is using almost a Hitchcockian approach to the camera work. It's obviously this isn't a huge budget film, but it looks gorgeous. He might not be able to afford aliens and UFOs and special effects, but my God, this guy understands film grammar. And so you open with this juxtaposition, this cross-cutting, this dynamic cross-cutting between the agents poking in the snow, right, to find something, and then the incident that precipitated with Monica Bannon, being abducted, and from that brilliant conceit, this juxtaposition like that, cross-cutting, just completely, continues through the film like that, making for us connections in our minds between things and showing us how one thing leads to another. To me, that's just great. And this scene here, this wintry, bleak landscape where they walk off the road, into this desolate snowbound. And you mentioned the long shot. Mulder walks from right to left across the screen to the car. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's about economy of storytelling. It's about symbols. I mean, obviously, people love and Fight the Future. We almost get the kiss and the bee stings Scully, and and it's all very locked up in that sort of passionate X-Files kind of thing.
Yeah.
We seem here to be on a much more, dare I say, real kitchen sink level. This movie feels very real.
Yeah.
Their house together, what Mulder and Scully are going through, the things they're grappling with. To me, it feels much less grandiose and mythic and much more grounded. That paints a picture that's more interesting to me. It's more interesting for me to go back and watch this film and grapple with it than it is necessarily to watch Fight the Future. I know that'll alienate some people, but I really love this film. To me, this is like a classic, almost Hollywood thriller that eschews a lot of the bells and whistles we've associated recently with blockbusters. It's not CGI laden, all that. Instead, it's really about people and what they're going through. Everyone here is grappling with something, from Father Joe to Scully to Mulder to the killers. It's really fascinating to me.
You mentioned about the killers as well, because there's a couple of things while we're talking about the film in general, because as I say, these 2 minutes that we've got at the moment are just all, there's not that much in content as such. But what I find fascinating with the film is I really like the interplay and the push and pull. As you know, I'm more of a Millennium fan anyway, so this does have that kind of element to the film. But the fact that Mulder and Scully are almost like on a balance, that Scully is very, very well balanced at the beginning of this film because she's doing what she wants to do, even though she's having the don't give up the stuff that happened within the film. But Mulder isn't. So, but to enable Scully to get Mulder out of that position, Scully's got to put herself off balance because she doesn't want to dive into the depths of the darkness that is interplayed between the two of them. And I find that does happen again in My Struggle, not as effective, obviously, but it does happen again where as I say, one of them has to be off kilter to be able to enable the other one to do what they need to do. Scully's so desperate to let Mulder get him out of his shell that she's willing to put her personal stuff, her actual professional life and personal life, to be off balance. And I do find, as you say, with this film, there's elements to that. In relation to my criticism of this film personally is that we don't see enough of the killers in relation to the way that they would have that kind of element to them as well, that their personal interpersonal relationship. It's more left to a mystery box element with them. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I personally would have liked to see more of that with Callum Keith Renee's character and the other guy who's he's trying to save. But we don't really get that. And that is, for me, is a criticism I would lay at it. It's probably the biggest criticism I have, because I do feel that is off balance for me. I don't know how you feel about that in general.
Well, you're right in the sense, because some people at the time said this is an incredibly homophobic film because the killers are gay and look what they're doing. And I had the good fortune, I guess a year maybe after I reviewed the film, to get to interview Chris Carter, and we talked about that. And I brought up that criticism to him, and he said, it's the opposite, John. And I said, that's my impression too. It's the opposite of homophobic, because what are they doing? And he said, it's the same thing. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Right? They are the mirror for what Scully is doing with Christian, right? She's not going to give up. And I mean, she's doing like radical brain surgery that we're told is painful and difficult and has very little chance of success. But the message from Father Jojo, don't give up. I mean, the mirror for that is these killers, these two men who love each other so much that they go to this extreme and crazy end to try to keep one alive. It's the don't give up principle. Chris Carter, in his lovely sort of taciturn way, he said to me, I said, is this film homophobic? And he said, it's the opposite. What you're saying, Kurt, is that if we had other instances of that, it would have made it sort of more three-dimensional, and maybe that metaphor would have come through a little more clearly for people.
Yeah.
And so I do very much understand what you're saying, because I've never forgotten that conversation, because my inclination is not to sort of knee-jerk rationalize, apologize, defend everything that an artist does, but to sort of seek to understand what an artist is doing. And so like I very clearly, especially after talking to Chris Carter, I get exactly what he was doing. The mirror sides to this, which is really beautiful. Again, that's that symbolism, right? But yeah, it's like if you knew that a little more and that had come forward a little bit, what would you have gained? But then of course the question is, what would you have lost? If the villains become too familiar, then do they lose their ability to frighten you, create danger, galvanize the action? I mean, I'm sure that's what Chris Carter had to weigh dramatically. Show more, bring the metaphor out, it becomes more clear, but also you then end up much more humanizing the villains. They have more screen time. You become less afraid of them, less fearful of what they might do or accomplish. Maybe you have too much sympathy for them. You see what I'm saying? There's such a balance there.
There is, yeah. I think I've had this conversation in previous minutes about that exact thing, about the push and pull, about how much you actually deliver, how much you actually hold back. And there is a little bit where I feel that it just becomes a little bit too fragmented to me to pull past it together. Although, having said that, on multiple rewatches, obviously you understand it more and you kind of, right, that's what was happening. It just felt a little bit like a little bit too abstract for me personally. And I like the abstract, but it just, from their perspective, it felt a little bit too much, where you just didn't really quite understand it. But that's on personal preference. And I totally get where Chris Carter's come from, and I didn't see it as homophobic. I definitely felt that love kind of aspect to it. And again, going back to what we said in the previous episode, I think because I knew Callum Keith Renee, that I was already invested in him as a character anyway.
Right.
Whereas, like, if it had been a character or an actor who I hadn't known, I probably would have been even more at a loss. But I was already fixated on, Callum Keith Renee's in this film. So it was kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll see what he's doing. We didn't maybe get enough of him. And that's maybe the point of view that I may be coming from.
And you make such a good point, Kurt, because again, this film is one that gets better and better sort of every time you rewatch it.
Yeah.
And again, remember, it was positioned as a summer blockbuster. What, it came out like the week after Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the week before Dark Knight. We were used to the X-Files at that point in 2008. I mean, I rewatched those. I rewatched Millennium. I mean, I've watched those episodes so many times. I love them. I garner so much enjoyment from them. But, when you go to the theater, sure, you might see it a second time, maybe. But it's like, wow, that's a busy time of the year because you're going to see these other movies. It's not like where you have it, where you can rewatch it on your DVD, like right out the gate. So it's like, I agree with you. Like, it is pitched high, very abstract. And the more you watch it, the more these colors, sort of become fully formed and you realize all the nuances. But again, imagine it's the summer of 2008. Hey, this week it's Indiana Jones is back. Next week, the X-Files is back. The week after that, it's Batman. The X-Files shows up with, this dark meditation about a pedophile priest and his redemption. You're like, what is this? Right? Yeah. No aliens, serious, grave, symbolic, not easy to digest and process in just one viewing, for sure.
So at that point, I think we'll call it a day for this episode and we will move into the next one. So until next time, trust no one.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses, so don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.